The Russian invasion of Ukraine is so historically complex that there is no clear, simple political solution. Or is there? Hello there, you 5.1 million awakening wonders. Thank you for joining me on this voyage of discovery. Even though we deal with complex and challenging issues, together we can awaken. Together we can ascend. Together we can come up with conclusions that will be impossible in solitary, introspective, nasal gazing alone. Together we can come up with some new ideas. I hope you're going to come up with some. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this complex discourse. Before we get into the video, I want to let you know that I'm live in the UK. You can come and see me in Scarborough, Sheffield, Liverpool, Glasgow, Bristol, Plymouth, Blackpool. Come see me. The live show is a phenomenal experience. For us to be in the same space together is a real joy, particularly after the crazy couple of years we've had and the madness we're going through now. There's a link in the description if you want to be part of this wonderful experience. I'd love to see you there. Now, I had Yanis Varoufakis, former leader of Syriza, on my podcast Under the Skin, a Luminary original. The full podcast will be available to you on March the 12th. I asked him to break down for me, as a politician, as a person who sat before the EU, as a person who's seen firsthand the nature of corruption that goes on in the elite rarefied areas of geopolitics, what he thought was the solution to this complex problem. You'll really enjoy hearing him talk about it because, for me, he captures some of the moral priorities and some of the political solutions, i.e. emphasis always being with Ukrainian people and the challenge they're facing as an invaded nation, but how we can best understand the history and what possible solutions might be available and the nature of compromise. I think sometimes, I know I do this in my private life, and I bet I do it in the abstract when I'm thinking about stuff that I can't even directly affect. I hold on to the idea of perfection when holding on to perfection actually is preventing a solution. I wonder if you do that in your own life as well. Look in the comments below. In this part of the conversation from my Luminary original podcast, Under the Skin, their full podcast being available on March the 12th, Yanis unpacks the situation in an elegant and beautiful way and reads out a letter from Russian people. It's very moving and touching. So stay to the end because I want to hear what you think about it. Hit me up in the comments below.
We need to do this. It's, it's a dirty job. Someone's got to do it, to talk about Ukraine.
We've got to talk about Ukraine. We've got to talk about a new approach to populist politics. You're more experienced than almost anybody what a version of left-wing populism might look like, particularly in success. We have to talk about I'll just tell you firstly where what's sort of been going on with me and my own, because I feel like perhaps it will give you some sort of different platform, because I know this is something you're discussing at length and it falls upon you a lot to discuss this stuff. And thank you again for coming on. I love you coming on. I love you in general, and thanks for coming on for the third time. So Yanis, right, this is what, obviously when there's an invasion of a country, you feel like, oh God, war, people are going to die, this is so pointless. Then you hear okay, well, what's the history of that region with regard to NATO? Is there a historic claim to certain aspects of Ukrainian territory or populations within Ukraine? Then you hear about, the sort of resource aspect of things, the pipelines and all of that, and even mumblings and rumors of elements within Ukrainian government that are not favorable or extreme right. Some people have said, all of these elements, none of which mitigates the horror and tragedy of invasion and war. The reason I wanted to speak to you, so I saw a tweet you said where you said, Washington should just pledge not to expand NATO or ever invite Ukraine, and Russia should immediately withdraw. Where you said, there's a simple thing that perhaps people could get behind. I've heard people, particularly on the left, and I'm really curious about this. It's like there's an existing culture war rubric that wants immediate simplification, that wants villains and victims, that wants pat tropes and trite phrases and things that can be posted on Instagram, and that as if that is the resolution, that everything is being passed through some dumb filter of idiocy. But I've also heard people on the left saying Russia is serious, Putin is a serious dude, this could be an imperialist project and Russia could be under the stewardship of a madman. This could be legitimately and genuinely a global threat. So with all that in mind, I hand over the podcast to you, Yanis Varoufakis. See you in an hour.
I hope you won't abandon me so quickly. Look, First things first, when there is an invasion, we must always take the side of the people who are facing troops with direct orders to violate their homes, to bombard their neighborhoods, to destroy the circumstances of their lives. And I say that without any hesitation and unconditionally. This is not something that our Western rulers do. I say this regarding the Ukrainians. When I see Ukrainians in Kharkiv, for instance, putting together Molotov cocktails by which defend their homes from the advancing Russian tanks, I applaud them. But our rulers applaud them while at the same time, when there is a 15-year-old kid in Kalkidia in the Palestinian territories, throwing a stone at an advancing bulldozer with the intent to demolish his home, they call him a terrorist. So we make no such distinctions. We support the defenders of their homes, of their neighborhoods, of their communities. So today we stand with Ukraine. Unconditional. No ifs, no buts, no conditionalities attached. To help Ukrainians at this very moment in time, we need to apply the same moral compass universally, making the distinctions between fashionable, deserving victims in the Ukraine and unfashionable victims in Yemen, where only 48 hours ago, I don't know whether you noticed that, Russell, or our viewers noticed it, there were 37 sorties by Saudi Arabian bombers taking out civilians in Yemen. Not in the news, unfashionable victims, who cares about them? My simple point is that to support the Ukrainian victims of Russian aggression, you have to support the Yemen victims of Saudi aggression. If you don't do that, then this is the greatest gift to Putin. Because he says, okay, well, your fashionable victims are unfashionable in Moscow. I don't give a damn about them. And then you enter a relativizing narrative regarding which victims are deserving and which ones are undeserving. Moving on to something else you said, which is a crucial point. Let's forget about our little ideologies at the moment. When there are people who are dying, their circumstances, their situation must prevail and must trump our own little political projects, whether it is my political project, your political project, or NATO's political project. So the question now is, how do you stop the carnage? How do we get the Russian troops to withdraw back to their bases? And how do the Ukrainians get a chance to fight it out amongst each other, not with weapons, but with the power of arguments between the leftists and the rightists, between the communists in the Ukraine and the Nazis? And there are Nazis in Ukraine. This is not a reason to bomb Ukraine. In this country, in my country, at some point, the Nazi organization called Golden Dawn was the third largest party. So what? You bomb Greece because we have the serpent's egg hatching in our midst? No. What you do is you create the circumstances for democratic politics in Greece, in the Ukraine, in Yemen, to fight, Islamist fundamentalism, Nazism, fascism, Boris Johnson, whatever. So how do we get the Russian troops out of there? NATO is not proposing to invade, and that's a good thing, because if NATO invaded now in support of the Ukrainians, we would have Third World War, and climate change wouldn't get a chance. We would have destroyed the planet before climate change was completed. So NATO is not going to go there and support the Ukrainians. I have a serious moral problem here, Russell, because I think that my heart is when I see the Ukrainian resistance fighters putting up a great struggle and preventing the Russian tanks from entering Kiev. I celebrate with them, but I know who Putin is. Putin is a ruthless killer. He proved that in the early 2000s, when he flattened Grozny. He destroyed a city of 250, 300,000 people in Chechnya, just in order to solidify his hold over the Russian government. he's perfectly capable of turning, like he turned Grozny into Dresden, turning Kiev into Dresden. So I shudder to think if he does it. So the more our Ukrainian comrades resist his army, the more likely it is that we are going to have that. I'm not suggesting that they should stop resisting. If I were them, I would keep fighting, come what may, even if he flattens the city. But we, from where we are, from the comfort of our own home or studio or whatever, we have a moral imperative to try to find a solution that we could sell to Putin that saves all these tens of or hundreds of thousands of people in the Ukraine and gives them a chance to breathe and a chance for democracy and a chance for independence. Now, the question is, is there anything that Putin would buy as part of such a deal? And I think there is. I think that Putin is ruthless and a killer and a war criminal, Chechnya, right? But he's not dumb. He's a highly trained strategist for the KGB. He knows that he cannot occupy the Ukraine forever. He knows that he's going to have something worse than Vietnam in his hands. He knows that the Russian economy is smaller than the economy of Texas, by the way, in terms of gross domestic product. Don't know whether you knew that. Smaller than the economy of Texas. Yeah. He doesn't have the funds to continue. He has the funds to continue to do a lot of damage to the Ukrainians, okay, to destroy a whole generation. But he cannot hold Ukraine. And he cannot hold Russia if he continues, along the lines of a modern Afghanistan for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So he's looking for a way out. And even if he's not looking for a way out today, he will be looking for a way out next week. And what is this way out that we can offer him, which is consistent with the interests of the Ukrainians and the rest of the world? Imagine if there was an offer by President Biden, because the European Union doesn't count. They're just the lackeys of the US. I mean, and we don't have a leadership in the European Union anyway. But Biden could hold a summit with Putin, and a quid pro quo could emerge. The quid pro quo being very simple: Russia withdraws from Ukraine. There is an agreement for the demilitarization of Donbass and the region around the borders between Ukraine and Russia. There can be some bargaining regarding particular plots of land, Crimea and so on. And both Russia and the United States guarantee the neutrality and independence of Ukraine. Anybody who says that's giving in to Putin will have to answer, what is the alternative? The alternative is carnage, a prolonged occupation, the permanent division of the Ukraine in the long run, and the toxification of politics both in the Ukraine and in Russia. And allow me to finish. So you gave me the floor, so I'll take advantage of your very kind offer. Look, amongst all this unpleasantness and distress that we all feel, I had some fantastic news today. The Progressive International, which is this body that we set up with Bernie Sanders back in 2018, and now we have organizations representing something like 200 million people around the world. We received a letter signed by several organizations of Russian socialists from Moscow, from St. Petersburg. And allow me to read just a few extracts, I won't bore you too much, of what they say. So these are Russians in Russia today, not emigres, in Russia today, taking huge, huge risks, writing this and sending this to us and asking us to publish it. So here we go. We are told, they say, that the opponents of this war are hypocrites and that they stand not against the war, but for the West. This is a lie. This is Russian speaking. We have never been supporters of the United States and its imperialist policies. When Ukrainian troops shelled Donetsk and Luhansk, these are the eastern provinces with quite a few Russian speakers in the Ukraine that were sort of annexed, quasi-annexed by Putin in 2014. We were not silent, say the Russians, nor will we be silent now when Kharkov, Kiev, and Odessa are being bombed on the orders of Putin and his camarilla, his entourage. There are so many reasons to fight against the war. For us, advocates of social justice, equality, and freedom, that are especially important. This is an invasion. No threat to the Russian state exists. But go on, I won't bore you reading the whole paragraph. This war produces incalculable disasters for our peoples. Both Ukrainians and Russians are paying for it dearly with their blood. Long after the dust has settled, poverty, inflation, and unemployment will affect everyone, and they continue. This war will turn Ukraine into rubble and Russia into a prison. This is Russians speaking. The opposition media have already been shut down in Russia. People are placed behind bars. Soon, Russians will have only one choice, and that is to rise up or prison. This war multiplies all the risks and threats to our country. Russia, they mean. Even Ukrainians who a week ago sympathized with Russia are now enlisting in the militia to fight our troops. Finally, fighting for peace is the patriotic duty of every Russian, not only because we are the custodians of the memory of the worst war in history, Second World War, when 20 million Russians died, or Soviets, but also because this war threatens the integrity and very existence of Russia. And they finish off with this beautiful paragraph. Putin is seeking to connect his own fate with the fate of our country. If he succeeds, then his inevitable defeat will be the defeat of the entire nation. Then we may indeed face the fate of post-war Germany, occupation, territorial division, the cult of collective guilt. There's only one way to prevent these catastrophes. We ourselves, the men and women of Russia, have to stop this war. This country belongs to us, not to a handful of distraught old men with palaces and yachts. It is time to take it back. Our enemies are not in Kiev and Odessa, but in Moscow. It is time to kick them out. War is not Russia. War is Putin and his regime. That is why we, Russian socialists and communists, are against this criminal war. We want to stop it in order to save Russia. No to intervention, no to dictatorship, no to poverty. Russell, that was the best news I've had since the beginning of this invasion, reading this piece.
That's so beautiful, Yanis.
What did you make of that conversation? You know that Yanis is an old school socialist leftist with a lot of novel ways that technology could evolve populist thinking around leftist ideals, although he don't even like the word populism. Another thing that he talks about in the full podcast. He comes up with a lot of good suggestions and ideas. I think you'll enjoy it. I really enjoyed hearing him talk about Russia and Ukraine as well, because this is a person that's had to make decisions, not, of course, of that particular magnitude, but within the area of national politics and international politics. And I always like to hear how people that have been in those positions understand issues in a way that perhaps that you and I have yet to learn. If you want to hear all of that Luminary podcast, you can subscribe to Luminary, or you can get it off Apple. That's up to you. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at this one or this one. Please come and see me live all across the UK. Glasgow, Blackpool, Plymouth, Newcastle, Hull, Bristol. I'm all over the gaff. It's a fantastic, lively, vibrant, potent show. If you feel alone and alienated and like you want to feel like you're part of something, well, here for at least 3 hours, meditation, breathing, chaos, you will feel part of something. I promise you that. There's a link in the description. Please sign up to a mailing list if you want to keep up with what I'm doing, and please stay free.